Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning. Welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, we've had a couple of shows in the last few weeks talking about coaching and mentoring.
Yes.
But in a different vein. The production of A Chorus Line just ended last weekend.
From what I understand, it was great.
It was great. And we got a chance to see what the director and producer could do with the kids and how they get to teach life lessons to these kids, you know, using the arts as a handle. We had Chris Metzger on from Pinecrest, formerly of Pinecrest, I should say. And he always came on as a guest and spoke more about the things about mentoring, coaching, discipline, to shape the minds and the bodies of these young men as they move on in life. And we've talked on the show quite a bit about things like managing people's expectations and coaching, mentoring. Mm-hmm. Today we're speaking with Forth Heffner of the Faculty Resource. Forth is, he specializes in executive coaching and business consulting. He has been a guest on the show in the past, but Forth, you were wearing a different hat at the time. You've been a resident of Southern Pines for how long?
Well,
or Moore County, I should say.
Yeah, we moved here when I was 2.
Okay.
So I grew up here. I'm a rare native nowadays. But I left for about 15 years, went away to school, went away to college, lived away, and moved back in 2008 and worked for my family's landscaping business, Heffner Landscaping.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
How many years did you do that?
08 to December of last year, so what is that, 12 years?
Wow.
Not quite.
So tell me how you evolved from family business to coaching, and we want to talk about what it is that you do, and you know, was there something about the business you were in that gave you impetus to take it to a different level? Yeah,
so it's funny, when I was in college for 7 years.
You were in college for 7 years?
Yeah, and I'm not a doctor. And
okay.
So I just kind of bounced around a little bit, and I became a lifelong learner when I left college, ironically.
Okay.
So, you know, had a couple career jobs after college and realized that I really liked working in the family business that I swore I'd never work in. So I came home from Atlanta and worked for my dad for a while, and you know, that business was really set up for, you know, to support one family. And so my brother's there all of a sudden, and then I'm there, and it's just not built to sustain that.
Right.
So, you know, I like to read a lot, and I like to learn. I knew that we needed some help. We weren't in a position financially to do that at the time. So, you know, we tried to implement some things on our own, what we could. That's really tough to hold yourself accountable, especially when the day-to-day tends to run you in your business sometimes. The day can take over pretty quickly if you're not really disciplined or have somebody there to hold you accountable. So about 2011, or it wasn't, about May 6, 2011, my dad died of a heart attack suddenly in our office.
I remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was, of course, stunning. We weren't prepared for it. We were so unprepared for it, Bill, that he was the only signer on the checking account. We couldn't write payroll the next week. Not to mention this was a Friday, the week prior, we terminated our bookkeeper. And we had somebody else set to come in on that Monday. She came in. By Tuesday afternoon, she realized that the last one had embezzled maybe $50,000, give or take. So 3 days later, that happens, and 3 days later, he passes. And so, you know, the point of the story is that we realized at that point we were so unprepared for not only the present but the future. And so we had to really get serious about becoming a mature, grown-up company and not sort of a small family company. So we, you know, my brother and I kind of stabilized everything for a couple of years. We engaged with a company out of Pittsburgh, specialized in our industry, called Landop, and we just couldn't make it work financially. I think they would have done wonders. I've seen it over and over. Plenty of case studies show what they've done. So about 2015, what I think was their best coach left to start his own practice, and he reached out to us, and we were able to engage with him at that time. And his name was Steve Bach, and we don't work with him anymore, but he was great.
And tell me who he was.
He is a business consultant in Pittsburgh. He specializes in the landscape industry.
Okay.
A bunch of clients in pretty much Michigan and east of here.
So you guys hired him.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of difference did he make?
Well, there was the accountability part of it, first of all, and you probably know this, Bill, being an entrepreneur, but one of the toughest things about being an entrepreneur is, having faith to know that, hey, I think this is a good idea. I think this might work, but I don't have any evidence of that. And do I believe in it enough to go out on a limb here and try this? And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But there's a lot of experimentation, which is great in your business. But sometimes it's nice just to know that, hey, there's a way that's tried and true, has worked over and over again. If I implement this in my business, I'm probably going to reach some level of success. And so that was really good for us. He taught us how to sell. He taught us good financial practices. We could run a P&L and a balance sheet and QuickBooks type things, but we didn't understand how to measure as granular as we wanted to. We didn't understand how to measure gross profit margins, burden rates, production rates, labor hour costs, things like that. And that's what really made a difference. And that helped cash flow, which anybody in business knows that if you can impact cash flow positively, you can do a lot of other things in your business that you've always wanted to do, whether it's recapitalizing that or bringing on other, bringing on new V&E, whatever it might be that would help you improve your business.
So do you specialize in working with independent contractors, entrepreneurs, and if the answer is yes, are you then trying to fit them into a system that allows them to run free, but within a framework that they didn't have prior?
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's generally about, I am working with entrepreneurs. I like to work with, when I went into this, financially, I was in a good enough position where I could be selective. And I wanted to work with people who wanted to bring hope and fun back into their business. Because why do we go into business in the first place? It's freedom. It's potential wealth. The opportunity to make our own hours, things like that. So I do work within a framework. There's generally about 8 questions I want people to answer. I want you to know your core values and really live by them. The core values should be core, not just something you place on the wall or on your website. You should be able to recite them off. You should hire and fire based on your core values, people that fit that, and make sure that everybody, I want my clients to understand that just because we like somebody doesn't mean they belong at our business. I mean, if you want to play left tackle for the Panthers, you can't be 6 foot 205. You've got to have quick feet, long arms, and have the size to do that. And that's okay. And we just have to have be honest with ourselves and with the public about that. A couple other questions we want to answer. What are our goals? What are our short-term goals? 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. 10 year can be a little bit more fluffy. It can be, pie in the sky, over the moon kind of shot. 1 year, we want that to be a little bit more solid. What's our revenue going to be? What's our profit margin, profit number going to be? What are some measurables? We're going to replace 2 vehicles in our fleet. We're going to add this role that we think, a client services role that we think will make a really big difference in the market and differentiate us from our competitors. So those are a couple of the questions. So to answer your question, yes, a loose framework, but at the end of the day, I help people define that, and then I just kind of help keep them within the boundaries that they've set for themselves.
Okay. You said a couple of things. Let's go back just for a second. The attraction of being an entrepreneur, you could run your own hours. But the reality is, any successful entrepreneur cannot run their own hours. They basically are working all the time. It's not a 9-to-5 gig. And if people think that they're going to have more freedom because you're an independent business person, probably isn't true, right?
Not always, especially if you're not deliberate about controlling those things and controlling the controllables, as it's said. When you're young, most of my clients aren't startups. They can't afford me, for one, and two, there has to be a little bit of that too stupid to quit, grinding 80, 90 hours a week. I have a client, for example, in Greenville, South Carolina. brilliant company. They're called Ringo Fire, and they're a marketing company, and they specialize in the hardware industry. Like Greenworks is one of their big clients. I don't know if you know them, but they're Stills version of battery operated residential and commercial power equipment. It's just a coincidence that they're in the lawn industry with me. But they're 5 years old. They're, I think, north of 60 employees now. They add about 5 to 7 employees a month. They're growing that fast. One of their characteristics is that they're scrappy, and they're very honest about that. We work harder than anybody else. We're more creative. We're the unagency. That's sort of their tagline. It's not sort of, it's literally their tagline. But, where they brought me in to help is to help them kind of manage the chaos of growth, because their growth is unprecedented. It's not normal. And anybody that looks at them and thinks that's a case study for reality is not being honest with themselves. So, you have to, in the early days, really work that grind that. You have to be passionate about what you do.
Right.
And you have to understand about who you are.
How did you acquire all this experience to have this gravitas where you could go forward and then put yourself in a position where you could actually be the guiding hand or light for businesses that are growing? Because your experience was strictly in a family landscape business. Was there a graduate school in between? Were there any special classes? So where did you get that experience?
Probably the same place you got it, Bill. Just
on the streets.
Yeah, and maybe your question was rhetorical, but
no.
Yeah, just the same way you did. Just and I don't know your full background, but just learning as you go, making those mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, and again, while sort of my goal is to bring hope and fun back to business for business owners, I want them to have the resources that I didn't have at the time, and eventually did. So it wasn't all hard knocks, but some of it was education. But I don't have an MBA or anything like that.
Okay, so hypothetically, you come to me, you come to a small business, and you have a resume now. You have a backlog of clients, success stories. So what does that presentation look like? We'll use an example of an independent real estate company just to start. How does that contact start? How do people find you, or how do you find them? And what does that interview look like?
Yeah. So I'm in my early days, so I spend a lot of time, I wouldn't say cold calling, but warm calling, people I know, working my network, things like that.
Okay.
I work a little bit off referral too. I'm pretty selective about who I'll work with, both because it has to be the right fit for me, and I have to be the right fit for them. That's because these are long-term relationships. Average client relationship is going to be about 5 years, and so we have to be the right fit for each other. But that initial conversation is really just getting to know each other. I'm interviewing them; they're interviewing me. I want to know. I have a ton of questions to ask people, both because I'm just naturally curious, but I want to make sure they're the right fit. I'll ask you, what are some successes that you have going on? Because usually when people engage with me, they've got some pain. And so, I already know that. I need to get to what specifically the pain is so that I can customize something for them, but they've already got pain. And so the mind is wired for negativity. It's an evolutionary trait that, helps us in the wild, that we've carried on throughout the ages. And so I know that if I ask somebody, what's going really well? What are some successes right now?
Yep.
They'll start telling me some successes, but if they've got pain, it'll quickly turn into, but I've got this and this and this going on. That's just the way our minds are wired.
Right.
And so I just question and listen. I went to a speakers group, Sand Hill Speakers Group last week. It was my first time, and it was a great experience. And I was doing my intro, and I said, well, the reason I'm here is I want to become a better speaker. I want to stop using as much like I have here today.
Like I do.
Yeah. But I said, I don't think I was a very good listener for a long time, and I've spent the last 5 or 6 years trying to be a better listener. And so that's really what I try to do when I have a first engagement with somebody. It's just listen, because people want to talk. They want somebody to listen, because it is literally lonely at the top. I mean, that is not fallacy. That is true. And so they just want somebody to listen. And so that's sort of where the executive coaching part comes in. But if I just listen, then I can kind of customize a pitch for them, because again, I'm fitting them in, or I'm seeing if they fit within the framework of what I teach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That expression, that it's lonely at the top, was reinforced by somebody I grew up with who became a very successful director of many large companies over his career, and has since retired, but did a YouTube video with his son, who has a radio show in California, and he talked specifically about that. He said a couple of things that stuck with me. One was getting an MBA, not that important, as long as you're passionate, as long as you are curious, intellectually curious and energetic. But, it's not that it hurts, but that's not a ticket to, okay. And he was stuck in a situation where he had many decisions to make, cost-cutting for companies that he had taken over that had been on the way down, and he sort of gotten them back on their feet. He had some tough decisions to make, and he said it's lonely at the top. I've heard that in the past, and because sometimes you're by yourself, and sometimes decisions that you make don't positively affect everybody around.
Yeah, and the other thing, and again, I'm sure you know this, but not only is it lonely at the top, but most people don't understand what it's like to be in your position. They don't understand what it's like to make those positions that have an impact on, your employees, their children, their wives, their future.
Right.
Because your obligation is to the business.
Right.
Now, sometimes, those two hopefully can align, and maybe that's where I come in, or people like me. But unless you've been there, you just don't know. I used to work restaurants when I was in college, and a little bit after, in the evenings after college, and unless you've waited tables or worked in a kitchen, you don't know what that's like either.
That's right.
Just like I don't know what it's like to run a real estate firm.
Let's come back in the second set. Our guest is Forth Heffner of the Faculty Resource, and he is talking all about executive coaching and consulting. We want to talk about the differences between the two.
Sure.
And we'll be back in a minute. This is All Things Moore County. Welcome back to our second set of All Things Moore County. We're talking with Forth Heffner about executive coaching and consulting. I've known Forth as he's lived here most of the time I've lived here in my life, and he has sort of evolved and left one business and now is in a situation where he's trying to help a lot of other people through his experience and hard knocks. I get emails all the time from people who label themselves an expert in this field or that field, and they say, wouldn't that be a great topic to have on your radio show? Would you be interested? And of course it's some publicist from California or whatever, and they're always timely things. And so we live in a world of information with social media, self-help books. Anything you want to Google, you can Google. Everyone has an opinion, and it's instantaneous. And honestly, sometimes people are not what they say they are, and people get misguided. So there's got to be a perception issue that you probably have to deal with, where you have to justify your presence, your existence, and get over that.
Yeah, and that's why I like to work off referrals a lot, first of all. But yeah, I get that. I get all those LinkedIn messages, even in my role, from somebody that's going to do this and that. And to be honest with you, I don't overuse the term coach, because I think it's been butchered to some degree by people like that.
So do I.
I like consultant better, just because, to be frank with you, when I went into this, I thought I'd be more of a consultant, because I like the technical aspect of it. Because the difference between a coach and a consultant, in my opinion, is a consultant teaches you tools and techniques. They either work or they don't. They're black and white. A coach is a little bit more, helps you set goals, hold you accountable, things like that. Like I said, I didn't intend on being a coach. I've sort of morphed into that because there was a need out there for that. Right. I don't look for that. Like I said, I work within a framework. I work within a framework called, I'm a Pinnacle Business Guide. It's a system, if you're familiar with EOS or Scaling Up. Scaling Up is based on a book by Vern Harnish from, I think, 1994. It's called Mastering the Rockefeller Rules. And it's based on a lot of the principles from, that Rockefeller used to build his, Standard Oil, I believe. And it was just about simplifying things, holding people accountable, daily stand-up meetings, setting your goals, holding yourself to them. Just those, we tend to overcomplicate things in business, but this was a simplification of it. And so about 4 years ago, I came across the book Traction from some friends of mine in Michigan that are in the consulting. They're more consultees than consultants. They were in my network. I read that book, and it was basically, built off of Scaling Up, which was, based on the book by Vern Harnish. And so EOS is out of Detroit, and it's actually pretty popular right now, especially in urban areas for companies, 10 to 250 employees or so. And it just answers those questions. What are your goals? What are your, what are you going to hold yourself to? What are your core values? How do you qualify whether people are qualified to work with you or not? Things like that. So kind of back to the consultant part, I like that because it's objective. It keeps things clean. The coaching part is more relational. And so I think that's why there can be such a chasm between the good ones and the bad ones. Of course, the bad ones are going to get, that's what the reputation is going to be based on. So I don't know if that clarifies or answers your question, but yeah, I certainly understand the opinion out there.
That expression Stephen Covey has, begin with the end in mind. So when you go in and you're interviewing initially a company, do you start with what is your mission statement and work backwards and see how they're achieving it? Is it that cut and dry and simple?
Sort of. You're exactly right. I certainly want to start with the end in mind, because how do we get somewhere if we don't know where we're going? So we start at the end, work our way back.
Right.
And it makes things a little bit more visible for people, brings it down to the ground a little bit.
Right.
I like to start with the organizational chart, because one of the biggest dysfunctions I find in business is people, remember in Office Space, I don't know if you remember that movie from the 90s, but the guy reported to like 4 bosses. So every time he screwed something up, he had 4 guys coming by his cubicle to tell him what he did wrong.
To kick him in the butt.
Yeah. And so, I have a friend his name's Walt Brown. He's out of Raleigh, and he's built this system called organizational cognizance. You should look it up. It's great. But he has about 14 questions that he asks people, or that he wants to make sure that their staff understands, is that it's a few of them are, do I belong? Do I understand how I'm held accountable and what I'm held accountable to? Do I understand who I answer to, who I'm mentored by? Where do I go for training? These are simple things. So you might go into a big corporate job and you've got this 13-page role description that says, it's like your employee handbook. The only part of it, it's 45 pages. The only part of anybody reads is the compensation and PTO part of it. They can recite backwards and forwards for obvious reasons, because there's a large incentive involved there for them, or disincentive, depending on how the structure is. But yeah, I start with the organizational chart to make sure we have some clarity on who answers to whom, and where, if you're not at that top level, how do you get there? What's the route to get there? The other unique thing about this is this, and I'm frankly not sure whether I should attribute this to Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction, or to Vern Harnish, who, the Scaling Up program. But there is a difference in a business between the visionary and what they call a visionary, what they call an integrator. So I don't know if you've ever read the E-Myth, Michael Gerber. It's kind of one of the preeminent business books. And if my understanding is that Gerber was sort of the father or something of franchising. Anyway, so he talks about there's 3 different types of people in a business. There's technician, there's a manager, and an entrepreneur. Technician is somebody, if you're in the landscape industry, it's somebody that likes being in the dirt, likes driving the tractor, likes changing the blades and working on the machines.
Right.
Second, a manager type is somebody that's really organized, somebody that can hold people accountable. They like clear objectives. Those people are, and all 3 of these people are
vital.
Important. Yeah, vital. Now, the entrepreneur is it's an enigma that we don't understand, because we want to fit that entrepreneur into one of those other 2 boxes. But the entrepreneur is a visionary who has these ideas all the time. 9 out of 10 are moronic or just goofy. I'm a visionary type, quote unquote.
Yep.
But one of those 10
Yeah.
might be world changing.
Yep.
And so what we do in a business is that we take that entrepreneur, we put them in a manager or technician role because that's what the business requires, and we stifle that creativity. And so that company goes from creative, revolutionary, evolutionary to meh. And so in that org chart, we want to make sure that if we've got a visionary in that company, that we've got an integrator part, which is that manager that can kind of keep things level and can filter down all those, bad ideas from the visionary. But we want that visionary to be out there handling big relationships, networking the community, being an idea person and running the culture, being really proactive about that part of it.
Okay. So you're very compelling when you speak. It's sort of like you're taking a company and saying, hey, how can we make you the most aerodynamic we possibly can, but keep the creativity going, the imagination going, shore up the structure a little bit, and I guess be more expedient, more efficient.
Yeah, and simplify things. When I was a kid, my dad had a big fat wallet. He had a lot of keys on his keychain. And to me, that symbolized importance. All the men I knew had big wallets with lots of cards or whatever, and that signified importance to me. So when I was 14, I would get a wallet. And when I was 15, I guess you got a permit or something like that. When I was 16, I got a driver's license card. I had a reason to have a wallet.
Right.
That was my first step towards importance.
Right.
And then at 18, I got a credit card that I was irresponsible with. And then another. And you've got all these cards and everything. And as I got older, I realized that wallet didn't make me any more important. It didn't give me a greater sense of self-actualization. And so I started trying to simplify things. I've got a small little, 1/4-inch wallet now with just the essentials. And so that's what I'm trying to do with people, or help people do with their business, is that we overcomplicate things to make ourselves feel more important. Or to make our business feel more important, something like that. So I want people to understand that you can still be important and influential and impactful by simplifying things. And in fact, by having that thinner wallet and fewer keys and simplifying your processes, you can make a much bigger impact on a greater audience.
That's a great word picture.
Thank you.
Good story. I'm betting that when you were in the landscape business and your family business, you never used these two words together like you just did, self-actualization.
That's what is it? Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
That's it.
And so that's the top of the pyramid is that self-actualization, and few of us ever reach it. But
how do you explain that to a business person? What it is?
Well, it depends on what their goals are. So we were talking about starting at the end and working our way back. So I want to know. We work on their 10-year goal before we work on their 1 year.
Right.
Because again, we're working back. So 10 years. So let's say 4 properties. Your goal in 10 years is to be in 35 states with, 500 franchises or something like that. Okay, that's great. I love that. I want to help you reach that. And so we work our way back. And but anyway, that's your form of self-actualization, at least in the next 10 years. So that's how we get there.
When we come back in the final set, can we talk about some of the company? Are you working specifically with companies in Moore County, or because you mentioned Greensboro? No,
Greenville, South Carolina.
Greenville, rather. Yep. So, how do you get your clients? How did that all start?
Well, I really just started picking up the phone with the people I knew. Neil Robinette was a friend of mine. He runs C.F. Smith Property Group down in Rockingham. Of course, they have a huge presence here in Moore County with Pinecroft and National. And he was a friend of mine. Our kids go to the same school. And I just called Neil and I said, hey, let's grab breakfast. So we went on over to Betsy's and got a scramble bowl we both got. Neil's really healthy. Inspires me that way. Yeah. And I just talked to him about what I was doing. And we had a prior relationship at Heffner Landscaping there. And, Neil's one of those guys that he inspires me. He's hungry. He's young. He's hungry. He knows what he wants out of his business. He's in a multi-generational business just like I was. So we had a lot of alignment there. And so that's really, I've cold called some, that is as effective as you can make it. But, and that's just part of the gig early in, when you're trying to build a practice. But most of mine have been relationships. The group in Greenville, South Carolina was a guy I went to college with. We weren't super tight then, but we were in the same circle, and I just called him. And he had pain, and so far I'm able to help him with it. But that, ideally I'd like to work mostly around Moore County, or at least in driving distance, Charlotte, Raleigh, Wilmington. But,
sure.
Not every company has the resources to to engage with me, but also understands or is willing to admit to themselves or is ready for that.
Okay. We're going to come back and talk about that,
Okay,
about
great.
the resources and such. We're speaking with Forth Heffner. We're speaking about business consulting, business coaching, making businesses of all different walks of life more efficient, more aerodynamic, and I guess at the end of the day, more rewarding and enjoyable. This is All Things Moore County. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County, speaking with Forth Heffner, speaking about coaching and consulting, making businesses more efficient. Forth, you've touched on culture, you've touched on operations, you've touched on the financial. We haven't really talked too much about sales.
Mm-hmm.
Generating sales is usually the thing that the company does the best, right? It's everything else that comes. Is that not accurate? I mean, that's the easier part.
I think it depends on. It's probably case by case.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people might have growth, they might have sales, but they're not managing it properly. You're like a forensic detective going into a business and kind of shooting an MRI on it and trying to figure out between the culture, the sales, the operations, and the financial where you can fit in to help them.
Yeah, that's part of it, and certainly the sales is part. I love teaching sales. I love learning sales. I'm a student of it. Not because I just think that life, we're all salesmen. Sales has a bad reputation for many very fair reasons, but we're all in sales to some degree, whether it's getting our kids to do what we want them to do, or getting our employees or our coworkers or something like that. I just like that part of it. And I had the same misconceptions about sales before I really engaged with it. But, once I learned it and I learned, a wholesome way to do it, and essentially it's people will tell you what you want if you just ask the right questions and listen, the whole 2 ears, 1 mouth thing. And if you listen to people, then you can provide them what they need if it aligns with what you provide.
Do you find that there are different answers for different generations? They hear you differently. There's so many different generations that are in the workforce. Can you speak to all of them? Do they all have the same listening?
I'm not sure. Elaborate on that a little bit, if you will.
So if you're dealing with a company that has, maybe in their workforce, a lot of millennials, okay, and there might be a generational gap between the management. Okay. So if there's a communication problem from one generation to the other, is that something that you try to figure out? Because sometimes different age groups listen to things differently, or they have a different set of values.
Yeah, I think that's true to some degree, and certainly the the reputations of millennials and boomers, as they call them.
Right.
There's some validity to that, but I really think that it comes down to people. I think people are just different no matter their generation. I think that we all have similar needs, going back to the hierarchy of needs. We need to be fed, we need security, things like that. How we go about it, that might be differently. But I think that's more person to person than generational, in my experience, in a company. People want to, again, they want to know who they're accountable to. They want to know what they're accountable for, where they go to seek training, things like that.
When you sit down and you have introductory interviews with a company to see if you can help them, if they can help you, vice versa, can you talk a little bit how you structure your fees? What kind of partnership do you try to create? How does that look to a business person?
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on what their goals are, again, and how fast they want to get there.
Right.
With one client I have, they're very thoughtful, methodical, maybe a little bit more, white collar in the sense that they're very data driven. We call them high fact finders, and so they're willing to be patient and go quarterly. We meet with them for a full day offsite quarterly, and we review all of their goals, their plans, their 10-year, 3-year, 5-year, 1 year. We talk about some of their maybe some people issues, we call it sometimes. And an issue might not be somebody's underachieving or doing poorly. It might be, hey, we're underutilizing this person's talents, or we're not giving them what they need, things like that. For example, my client in Greenville, they're growing so fast, their needs are so great that we meet in person every month for 2 days. We are on the phone. I probably have 5 or 6 phone calls with them, different people in the organization, their leadership team, every week. So it really depends on how fast you want to get there. And so like with that company in Greenville, we meet one day off-site with the leadership team. So we can, it's put your phones away, really focus on these 8 things. And then the next day is being a little bit more on the ground. Whereas, say a CF Smith is more of a consulting engagement. The one, Ringo Fire is more of a coaching and consulting.
Okay. Do you work on an hourly basis? Do you work on a total job basis? How does that work?
So I don't, and this is counter to everything I've ever been taught, and know, I don't have contracts just because I need the relationships to be solid. I need people, the faculty resources, my banner, and that's great and all. But at the end of the day, people are they're buying me and my relationship. And so the only thing I ask people is for if we've got an issue or something we need to talk about, give good feedback and a 90-day notice. So, I work on a fee basis. It's a monthly retainer.
Okay.
And that varies depending on, again, how fast you want to get toward your goals.
Can you share maybe one of your success stories, one that would help illustrate what can happen from soup to nuts, beginning to end?
Absolutely. So another client of mine is Gray Fox Outdoor. I don't know if you know them, downtown Southern Pines, across the street from the ball fields.
Across the street from?
The ball fields.
Okay.
At Morganton and what is that, Bennett, right there, right beside Francie's. They're in Francie's building. You know Francie.
Yes.
And
yes.
Francie at Total House, to give her a
That's
plug.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Francie and Craig are friends of mine. And so I work with Sam and Betty Glick. They own Gray Fox Outdoor, and they are an Amish couple from Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And they sell tip-top quality outdoor furniture, structures, and play sets. I've only worked for them for about 2 or 3 months, but just maybe this will encapsulate it. But
yeah,
Sam is he wants to design a line of furniture, and he's already got a first design he's done. It's brilliant, and I think it could be the Sandhills chair. I told him, I said I think this could sit on the porch at the Carolina one day, or the new USGA building or something. It's going to be that notable. Mm-hmm. And that was our last. That was 2 visits ago, and last week I was sitting with him, and Betty was joking. She said, as soon as I walked out after the last meeting, Sam said, "Man, I shouldn't have told Forth about that. Now I have to do it."
Is that right?
Yeah. So that was his way of saying that. I make them get things done.
Sometimes, if you have an idea, if you share it, if you verbalize it, and you share it with people, it becomes more tangible and more real. If you keep it to yourself, it can disappear.
Yep.
Right, I learned that at a very young age.
Yep.
The more, because you become more accountable to yourself, right? When you share something like that. Yeah. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and actually near Amish country, when that movie Witness was filmed.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? I actually would drive through Lancaster, and there were some very paradise. These are some of the towns along Highway 30. We would see the Amish people all the time. So a lot of people think of the Amish people from the movie Witness, which is, part is true, but not always. But they're very hardworking.
Absolutely.
Very industrial. How long have they been here in town?
About 2 years, I think.
Okay.
Yep.
What are the greatest frustrations you have in your business working with people? Because you have successes, but...
greatest frustrations, I'm sure I can dig some out, but my clients are just, they're just great. They're hungry. They trust me. They trust the system. They see the progress. I mean, a lot of times what I'm asking people to do is, all right, everybody thinks about growth and expansion. And excellent, because that's how my mind works too. But sometimes the greatest growth and expansion we can have is by stepping back for 6 months or a year, really getting organized, putting down on paper where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And I would say the only thing, and again, this doesn't really apply to my clients, but my current clients, but is understanding that, hey, one step back is really two 4 steps forward.
I grew up in the costume jewelry business in sales, and then in management, and then I had my own company, and I've been in the real estate business for 21 years now. And something I learned at a very young age was volume is a false god, right? It's all about margins.
Yep.
And my guess is people can have volume, and they think they're growing, but they may be running in place and their margins actually may be dwindling. And you probably have to have that conversation with people because they don't get it.
Yeah, there's we joke a lot about, I don't know if you watch The Office, but it's a very popular show. And there's, if you know The Office, there is the time when Michael leaves Dunder Mifflin to go start his own, Michael, what's his last name? Whatever, paper company.
Yep.
And so he's sitting there with his accountant and Ryan and, what's the other?
I'm not familiar with the show, so I can't help you.
And the accountant is basically explaining to him that the faster you grow, the faster you put yourself out of business because you're not recovering your costs. And, people think they can outgrow their issues. And you can to a degree. You can out cash flow your issues, but it'll catch up with you. If you're not abiding by the principles of the business earth, the reality will catch up with you eventually.
It sounds to me like one of your underlying messages is, in talking with a client, is you want to be able to provide them with a structure that works for them. And one company's structure might be different from another company's, right?
Yeah.
Every situation is different.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't replicate it.
No, and again, every company's got their own personality. What is it? Jocko Willink says, structure is freedom. I believe I might be butchering that, but we have to have some framework for where we're going, how we're going to get there, and with whom, and the types of people. But structure is freedom.
Give me your website, because you've got a lot of information on there. You designed the website yourself?
Sort of. I'm actually working on upgrading it now.
Okay.
Just because things are moving so fast for me, and so I try to apply the same principles to my business that I teach and hold others accountable for.
Because you're actually building your own business at the same time.
Yeah.
What is your website?
It's thefacultyresource.com.
What is it that you want people to see when they go on that website? What's their takeaway that you want them to achieve?
I want people to pick up the phone and call me or email me, and I want them to know that 2 things. I want to know what's going on in your business, and I'll let you know whether or not I think I can help. And if I can't, then I'll refer you the other direction. And 2, I'll go back to, I want to provide people in leadership positions hope and fun again at work. And so I want people to know that there are things and people out there that can help you do that. But you have to be willing to take that first step, to put it down on paper that I want to get some help and I want to stop this cycle.
Yeah. You've got a young family. You've got 3 children. You have kind of been reborn. I know you just turned 40, so you're hitting milestones. So every time you add a new chapter to your book, new beginnings are great, and you're creating something not just for you, but for your family at the same time, and maybe putting yourself out there as an example of somebody could mirror you or could, right? In your website, on your website, you said you're retooling it. Will you have a section in there of testimonials? Very important in our business.
Yeah.
In our businesses.
I haven't really thought about that, frankly.
You should, yeah.
Yeah.
You know how people, Angie's List, when a personal referral is so much more valuable, right, than one that you go out to win over, if it's word of mouth.
Yep.
And I would just think that people would love to cross-reference some of the things that you've done, because it gives you some, standing.
Yeah.
Boom, right off the bat. I don't design websites, so
neither do I.
The name of the company is The Faculty Resource. executive coach and business consultant, but mostly consulting, right? And part cheerleader,
Yep.
But mostly consulting.
Yep.
So, fourth, I wish you the best of luck. You're in a great position. You work with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of independent business people, and this area is, we're full of them, right? Not a lot of corporate, not as many corporate people as possible. So if the glove fits, you wear it, right?
That's right, yeah.
We appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Fourth Heffner is a guest. The Faculty Resource is the company. He's a Southern Pines native. I hope you'll reach out to him. This is All Things Moore County. Have a great week.